Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 3 of the Gaming Podcast. I probably should get that right, shouldn't I, rather than do the two. And myself and Duncan, we're back, the third episode. Hello, Duncan. How are you been?
I'm all good. Third episode, so third different place to sit in. Excuse the mess around me for people watching on video. Obviously, the audio podcast don't need to know that, but I don't know. Pretend you didn't hear that, audio people.
Yeah, exactly. If you're listening to the podcast, don't worry about what we just went through. So we should have the audio should be better this week because last week I messed up on the recording because I didn't record from my headset, recorded from the desktop, which I probably should have had a practice before we actually started. This week I have done that, but
these things happen.
Live and learn, don't you, Duncan? But since we last spoke, what have you been up to, Duncan? Gaming wise, you can.
It's been quite a good week for Gamepass. I think there was something like 6 or 7 games came out on Gamepass, and quite a few good ones. Obviously, the big one I think was Exo Primal.
It's PS5 as well, but not
sort of a cross between. Well, it's a dinosaur, Left 4 Dead, Overwatch kind of PvE, PvP shooter, and it's not a bad game. It's probably not for me at the end of the day, but it does what it does all right. And I think they're updating a lot. They're going to add a lot. It's Capcom game, so they've got the money behind them. It's okay. I enjoyed the few games that I played, but as I said, if you got a group of friends, it'll probably be an absolute blast.
Yeah, the last dinosaur game Capcom did was probably Dino Crisis, wasn't it?
Oh yes, yeah.
I always
brings back some memories.
We do have a lack of dinosaur-based games in terms of shooter. I know we got like the Jurassic World ones, but they're a bit different. But like
Turok as well.
Turok, yeah, Dino.
But they're
Crisis,
all ones from
all of a sudden,
back in the day kind of thing.
Exactly.
So
and PlayStation sort of N64. I think they came out on the PS2. I think they were.
Yeah, I think some remakes have come out on the PC as well. But yeah, no good new games. No.
So intrigued by Exo Primal. I have. It was out on PS5 as well, but obviously not on the Pass.
Not on Game Pass, no, obviously. But I would definitely recommend people have a go if they got Game Pass. I think probably how many people are playing it in a month or two, whether it's lives or dies. But it seems quite popular. I think people, from what I've anecdotally read online and heard. So, good luck to it. And I hope it does well. What else have we had? One that I've played quite a bit, but I'm still, although I've played it for a long time, I'm still actually technically in the tutorial, is Wandering Village. Now, I've wanted to play this on Steam Deck for a while, and it's come out on Game Pass, so I've got to try it. And it's a city builder on top of the back of a giant sort of dragon kind of thing. So you build your city, but it's all on top of this animal that's walking around another world. So it's interesting so far, but I don't think I've got to the full difficult bits yet because I've heard that it can be quite tough, as in people get poisoned, resources running out, that kind of thing. So technically, as I said, I'm still in the tutorial, which is easy.
And we all know you love a difficult game, so look
yes. As soon as I have one person die, that'll probably be me going, I've had enough of this now, thanks.
I'll try something else now. But
if I can probably, for me, make it easy, just don't tell anybody about that. I'd probably play this quite a few times. It's got an interesting art style, like a 2D The animal itself is in 3D, but the sprites and the buildings are all like a cartoon 2D that are always facing you. So, yeah, that's quite a nice art style. And yeah, I'm enjoying that. If you like city builders, definitely try it. And I mean, I'll go through the rest like quickly. There's Toem, which is a black and white photo game, bit quirky, bit fun. I haven't played that much, but I probably will play it. Get some achievement points. Tectonica, I haven't actually played that. It's the only one I haven't played yet. So I think that's one where it's a factory one, a 3D first-person factory game. So you have to build a process and create things. So I thought I'd need a long time for that. Maquette, which is have you played Subliminal? Not Subliminal, Superliminal. That's a really mind-bending puzzle game where you use perspective to make something that you pick up small and you hold it against something far away, and it's suddenly you drop it and it becomes huge. And Maquette is a bit like that, but you drop something in a model, but you're inside that model as well. So when you drop it in the model, it appears behind you, huge, like a key or something. So if it's huge, you go out, or you go to the model, pick it up, take it outside, and then you can pick it up in the model smaller. If that makes sense, I don't. It's a hard one to explain, but once you play it, fantastic little puzzle game, and my wife loved it, which is always a plus. So
it's always good when your partner likes a game. It makes it easier for you when you want to play it.
Yeah, and I believe though, I think after about 2 hours, I think we're about 3/4 done.
Okay, so
maybe 3 hours, 2 or 3 hours. I think we've done.
You
most
like
of
your
it.
puzzle games, so don't you?
Yeah, it's a narrative puzzle game, and it's quite good. And then Figment 2, which I've only played a little bit. It's reminds me a bit of Bastion, that kind of thing. It's about somebody's, but you're in somebody's mind. So there's nightmares and stuff. I can't remember Figment 1, to be honest. So I don't hold much hope for Figment 2 staying in my mind very long. But really busy week for
Game
Pass.
But
none of them are terrible. And so that very good week.
What's your favourite one been?
Out of all of them, probably the Wandering Village. Although, as I said, still in the tutorial, it's one that I've wanted to play for a while. If you go by my wife, Maquette.
Well, yeah, you might change your mind by the time it gets difficult.
Indeed.
with Wandering Village, but I guess we'll find out. But
so, what have you been playing?
I mean, myself, I have this week. Only one game though. So over the last sort of week or few weeks, I've been just mainly playing one game, which was Diablo 4. But I got Diablo 4 out, so I put it down this week because I'm about level 50 odd with my character. So the actual story I've done now, so it's just now doing like the side quests, and also then you can like have the. I don't think they're called dungeons. I think they probably are called dungeons. Yeah, where you nightmare dungeons, where it's just all about loot, and then the different levels, higher ones, and you can go on different tiers and stuff like that. So that's what I'm just had been doing, but I will go back to it. But once you play something non-stop, you get a bit fatigued. So I've gone back to Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and I think that is coming out, or it might be now
it's
on Steam.
on PC. Yeah, so it's one that I'm interested in because I do like this sort of 3D platformer, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, I would highly recommend. I do like those sort of games though. So but it's it's got good ratings. I think it was like 89, 90% on. Which I don't know how seriously people take Metacritic or whatever, but I usually have a look.
It's a good indication, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I probably wouldn't be getting Gollum based on Metacritic ratings, but yeah, Ratchet and Clank is. I think I'm probably done most of the story by now. I'm not 100% sure, but it seems like I'm getting near the end of the story. But there's loads of like little side quests I can do and collectibles you can find. So there'll be sort of quite a lot of.
So going back to Diablo 4, that
Yeah.
wasn't there something about you had to create a new character for something? Like a new dungeons or new stories or something along the lines of that it was a new battle pass or something like that.
I don't know. I mean, there was like a recent update, but I haven't been on it since. It was quite a large update, so I don't know if they've made any changes. Hopefully, Duncan.
I mean, I don't want to force you back into it, but
I know I'm quite attached to my sorcerer, so I'm hoping I don't need to create any more sort of character. I know, like I've never been one of those people though, especially on those games who like make multiple characters to try out the different. Like, just because
you get a connection to them, don't you?
You get a connection, and then you put so much work in on that character, and you get to a point where you feel like a god. And then you go back and then, you're running away from like a warg or something like that because you just off a little bit of a time. I had Lord of the Rings online, so that was probably the main MMORPG I played instead of World of Warcraft. And me and my friend, we got really high level, and you did feel like a god, like at some point. So you'd go back to we'd sometimes go back to characters or like enemies who had given us trouble when we were like beginning, and just to show him that look at us now, and then like kill him in one hit or something like that. To the point where they wouldn't even fight you. You would walk around them and they would just leave you alone because you were too high level, and then you would start attacking them. And but we got to that point and we decided, let's make new characters, and you forget that and I went on.
Leroy Jenkins when you shouldn't.
Yeah, not even that. It was like I was like I think I'm trying to think what I was. I think I was like a warrior-based character, and then I went into decided to be a dwarf and an archer. So that was like I think it's archer or something like that. Anyway, but that was the class I went for, and like the build was a dwarf. And my friend was on the headset with my friend, and he asked me how I was getting on, and literally I was getting killed by a warthog. It's like I decided to try and attack
the basic enemy.
Yeah. What the first warthog I saw was I like left like the tutorial level, and then he was like shouting at me to be like, get to like the village or something, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it. So it puts me off because I don't like that. Like, you feel like very vulnerable and like, fragile when you go back to that. So, but what I've been playing this week, short story, is Ratchet, which is very good.
We've been playing on PS5 though, only not on PC.
I've been playing on PS5, yeah.
So I've heard that apparently because it was used as a way of showing off the speed of the PS5 SSD. But apparently you don't have to have an SSD to play it on PC, which some people have questioned because of the way it goes from between worlds. So whether that means that people will have problems playing it, in terms of you go from one world to another or whatever, however it works, and it'll just take forever to do it if you have a hard drive only or install it to a hard drive.
Like the Steam Deck can play most, if not all, games that come on Steam.
Yeah, but the Steam Deck has an SSD, but they're saying that you can install it just to a regular mechanical hard drive rather than an NVMe or anything like that. So whether they get an optimal performance, don't know. But hey, if anybody has it and has installed it, let us know.
Yeah, definitely. And because I know I was looking at there was like articles about the spec for what's it called now, Starfield. Apparently that's quite high specifications on it.
Yes, because they haven't let us know whether Steam Deck is going to be compatible. Apparently they have said it is something they really want. but they haven't said whether it's playable, verified. Well, they haven't
how
got
would
it verified.
Work with us? Because I know Steam Deck, because I had a gaming PC, which I did, but I had Game Pass on the gaming PC, whereas Steam Deck, I'm assuming you can't get Game Pass on your Steam Deck.
You can't, no, because you can't get Windows Store games on, no matter what you try. The only way you can do that is you can actually install Windows onto Steam Deck, but you get the Windows experience, which is not optimal. So whether it'll work through installing the Windows Store version, I don't know. But I've got xCloud, Xbox Cloud Gaming, so I'll be able to play it via cloud gaming from day one, hopefully, on my Steam Deck. But obviously, I need to be near a good internet connection. But generally, I personally play it at home. So it won't be a problem for me if I want to carry on my game. I can go and sit in bed on the Steam Deck, tap it away, and hopefully it will run really well.
PlayStation Pass this month, we got one of the games. So I haven't actually downloaded any of the games, but one of them was Call of Duty, the cross-gen Ultimate Bundle, and I looked at the size; it was 350 gigabytes.
Does that include Warzone?
I imagine so. I think it was like, it's like, and I was like, no, I'm not, because I'd have to like delete about 5 games, I reckon, to get that on there, because it's so like space is so limited that I looked at that space. The other one, the Alan Wake, which I haven't played, Alan Wake, but there is an Alan Wake 2 coming out soon, so I imagine that's why
there's a remaster, isn't there, coming out, or is out? I think there's a remaster.
The PlayStation one is
remake.
Alan Wake remaster on there, and then Alan Wake 2, which is a completely separate new game, is coming out in a couple of months' time, I believe.
Yes, it was a good game, the first one. The way it did a sort of TV show style episodes was quite good. I quite enjoyed that, and the story, it was quite a good horror, sort of horror-ish. I mean, basically, it was a horror, but it wasn't a particularly jump scary kind of horror. It was more sort of getting your heart going because you got very little to fight things, and I think you had to have batteries in your torch or your camera or something like that, and fight your enemies like that. And so you could run out of battery and have to get to another place. And so it was a very tense game. But it was really good. So I'm looking forward to Alan Wake 2. But this upcoming game that I think you said about,
I did.
Remnant. I've never actually played Remnant 1.
No, it's going to be a quick debate because neither have I played that game. It looks
shooter, is it?
It's a shooter, and it looks like it's like a monster.
It's a super tough one, isn't it? I think.
I don't know. It seems like it's getting some like good sort of early reviews, like pre-reviews. In terms of,
I've seen a lot of people online commenting that they had no clue. It's like, I was a Remnant fan, and I didn't know Remnant 2 was coming out, kind of thing. So I think it's surprised quite a few people who want to play it. But I'm not somebody who has played it, so it's not on my radar at all. And I mean,
it's a Souls-like video game. There you go. Probably would indicate that's going to be quite difficult. Yeah.
I'm just checking my Steam library to see if I actually own it. No, I own Remnants of Nazith, but no, I don't own Remnant, because I own a lot of games that were in bundles and such like. Remnant from the Ashes was the first one, and I'm just having a quick look, and its first tag on Steam is Souls-like. So you'd enjoy it, maybe.
I would. Yeah, unless it's hopefully it won't be more difficult than the Souls game. But yeah, Souls like I'm fine with that. But yeah,
we've never really discussed that in
have a look. But
first,
I rarely buy games anymore.
First 2 episodes. We never really discussed the difference in our Souls like kind of games. Just so people know, I'm somebody who I like my hand being held. I like something to have a big arrow over it saying, kill this, and being able to kill it. I like a good story, and I'm sure Martin does as well. But yeah, I've never been able to connect to a Souls game, Elden Ring, Sekiro, any of those. And I think, Martin, you are pretty much the complete opposite.
Yeah, I mean, I do like punishment, so I like put myself through difficulties. But I've only played 2 from top because I missed out on like the early ones, like the Demon Souls, Dark Souls, and Bloodborne. That's from software. I don't.
Yeah, because Sekiro
I started on
was a different
Sekiro,
company, wasn't it? I think, yeah, Sekiro was.
It is from software, though, isn't it?
Is it? I'm not 100% sure. I can check.
And then, yeah, I think it is. And then I went from Sekiro, and then I also had Elden Ring, which, yeah, so Sekiro, yeah, so from software. Sekiro,
yeah, it is.
Which I first, I wouldn't, yeah, so I didn't know about From Software. I knew about them, but I didn't know like how difficult their games were. So it took me by surprise where I walked over to the first enemy and he just absolutely, without even like any difficulty, killed me. Because yeah, it's all about sort of. But there is something to, especially when it's a boss and you go over and over and over again to finally get him past that boss. I think that there is like something to that, how like that rewarding, I don't know if that's a word, but how rewarding it is to finally beat that after hours and hours. And I remember on Elden Ring, it's probably like the first boss I came to. I cannot remember his name, but it took me, I reckon I was trying almost the best part. And my partner on that day had asked me to like do some tip runs and stuff like that, and I was like, "Yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to play this game, beat this boss in the morning, and then I'll go and do some tip runs." Didn't do the tip runs because I ended up on the game, and I got to the point where I was like, "I cannot not do it because I won't come back on it because I'm not going to put myself through it." So. But in the end, I was coming up with strategy, so I was like, okay. I knew all the different moves he did in the end, because he did quite a few different moves, but just did them differently. Like, see, it wasn't like the same occurrence. So, but I knew in it, like, when he was going up, I was like jumping up. I was like, I know what I need to do here. So I'd have like plans, and then when I finally did kill, I remember he had like there was a couple times where I got his life really low, and then he would like. Because it wouldn't take a lot for him, like hit you a couple times and you were dead pretty much. So a couple of times where I got him really low and then he would all of a sudden hit me and I almost, as close to crying as I could do. And then, yeah, the time I did it again, I remember his life getting really low and I was like, do I go in and just go for the kill? And I was like, no, I'm going to make it really patient and just make sure I do not get hit. So I had no like potions left or anything at this point. So I knew if I was like one hit away, and then I did it. And yeah, one of the best things in gaming, in my opinion, anyway. That when you,
I should clarify, I'm not anti Soulsborne games. I mean that Elden Ring is probably one of the highest rated games ever, and I'm not somebody who goes onto Metacritic and goes, "Oh, 0 out of 10." Get rid of that. It's a load of rubbish. I appreciate the art. I appreciate that some people do like torture. If you like that sort of thing, it's just not for me. So yeah, I mean, I can imagine that beating some of these bosses, especially the big the bigger ones that where you've got probably 0.1 second window to hit them or to dodge kind of thing. I can imagine, the feeling of that. I just in my older age and having children and whatnot, I don't have the patience anymore. Go back 20 years and I may have had the patience, or even go back 30 years. But nowadays, I just can't be bothered.
Yeah, I think in the boss, I think it was Margit, or something like called Margit. So if anyone,
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, he was like one of the first ones, but he is really difficult. He's like one of the, because there are like mini bosses around before you get to him, but he's like one of the, like, step out and there he is, and there's like a bit of a cut scene and everything. So
which is Elden Ring the best of all the ones you played, or two that you played, or three?
Yeah, the two I've played. Sekiro is really good as well. Like that.
Sekiro, I've heard, is possibly the hardest. I've heard.
Well, there you go.
So whether that means it's better for some and worse for others, I don't know.
There are some really good bosses on Sekiro. Like there's a I can't remember something butterfly, which is, and then there's like a giant gorilla thing as well, which is like, So Sekiro is. But there's like, that's rewarding as well. There's sometimes you'll go into like a little village, whatever, and you can like kill everyone without being seen. Because obviously it does promote sort of stealth. You're like a samurai, so I would definitely enjoy my Souls-like game. But I can understand those who might appreciate the game but not exactly enjoy it, because I've had friends who tried them and they just haven't got on with them, because it is a difference between that and, say, other games that you could play where the difficulty level.
I'll just interrupt the podcast a little bit a second. I think technical issues are, I think my audio recording's now messed up because I'm recording on a drive that hasn't got any room. So we might be using this video audio again, which hopefully means we'll have a good one. So I do apologise, audience, if we have the video audio again. These technical things, we will get there. We will get there. But yeah, so fingers crossed. Anyway,
I think there weren't really any news this week. I know the last couple of podcasts we've done has been the Activision, but I don't think we really need to discuss that because there haven't really been anything updated.
No, thank God. Thank God.
Yeah, you have disappeared from the video as well, Duncan. I would just say that it's just me at the moment, which
because I was doing this.
Some viewers might be.
I was looking left and right and all over the place. So I was highlighting yourself.
Oh, okay, that's right. I thought maybe that you may have been doing something in the background, but came a point where I was like, is he going to put it back, or is it just going to be me now for the rest of the episode?
No, I'm back. So people get this delightful face.
Exactly. That's what people come into. Why they come onto the YouTube is to see your face. So, what I wanted to go through for the last couple of episodes, but we've sort of run out of time, was in terms of. So, as I mentioned in the first episode, we are of an age, aren't we, Duncan, where we've seen a lot of changes in gaming since when we first started gaming to where we are now. So we're going to go sort of through some of those changes for those who, I think, even if you started or if you're born in early 2000s, you probably wouldn't have experienced some of the stuff that we're going to go through, because I don't mind. I'll make a start.
Yes, you could be a full-blown adult and still not know
exactly.
a lot
you
of
could be in your 20s and you wouldn't know
stresses and strains that
early
gaming used to.
I wouldn't even say it's early gaming, because obviously gaming goes back into the 70s, doesn't it? Which I mean, the first home
probably obviously you got Pong and whatnot, but if you go on to actually graphical things from the Atari to the Spectrum, until you actually had home computers, you didn't really have save games, and even when you got to the N64 and Mega Drive and such like, there was a lot of battery saving. There was batteries in a lot of cartridges for games for the SNES and Mega Drive. Hence why a lot of people find old cartridges and they're like, "Oh, I can't save because the batteries died."
But I mean, just my memory of Sega Mega Drive, for example, is that the majority of the games you couldn't save them. So either you would just having to turn them off and then restart the game again, or you have to complete them all in one go. So they were shorter. They weren't like 100-hour games like we get now, which would be a bit harsh.
But then you had
really difficult.
You had the Phantasy Star games, but they did have saves in them. They had the battery save. I mean, have you ever heard of Manic Miner?
No.
Manic Miner or Jet Set Willy, have you heard of that? No. Sound familiar? But Manic Miner was a very, very early platformer on the Spectrum 48K, and I must have seen it was like one screen was one level, and when you completed that, when you got to the end of that, it loaded another screen, and then you could. It actually had almost a big world in a way. There was lots of screens you could get to, but it was so hard. And this, like how I'm not nowadays, it was so hard. I probably saw that first screen 1,000 times easily. And and you couldn't get to a certain point and go, I'll just have a checkpoint there. There was no checkpoints. It was just an incredibly hard game, and you had to do the first screen if you died. Simple as that.
On the whole, I think games were more, and I think the reason why is because they were shorter, weren't they? Like, if it was a really easy game, people play it. Mostly. But like you had like Sonic, which was really difficult.
Yes.
And again, if you ran out of lives, you would just die and have to start at the beginning. The first sort of experience I had with memory was passwords. So I remember there were games where you would get a password. So like the Mickey Mania game. So I think there was Fantasia. I used to love those games as a kid. And then you'd get passwords when you complete levels.
And you'd get your selected magazine would always have a cheat section, which would have passwords or cheats like Konami code kind of thing. And it was you had to, you couldn't just go on the internet and type in a game and say, right, how do I cheat or get to the end level? Or there was no mods or anything like that. You played a game. If you wanted to cheat like a passcode, you had to wait for the magazine to come out, or you had to call. They used to have tip lines, didn't they, for some games? In all the instruction manuals, they'd have a number at the back if you wish a tip, but they would be the equivalent of paying about probably £5 a minute kind of thing nowadays. They would used to be, even in the 80s, about like 50p a minute, which nowadays is a lot of money. It would be about £5 a minute. And that would just be to phone somebody up and them go, here's a passcode. There you go. And so most people wouldn't call them.
Well, but I was, and then after that, we did get memory cards that came in like on the PlayStation. Did they have memory cards? Or they did have memory cards on the Nintendo 6. You put them on the
they were
in the controller,
in the bottom of the controller, didn't they?
I was thinking to the top where you could put like a rumble pack in there as well. But that
was the one.
Yeah. So you put them in the controller. I don't know if they had them in the Sega Saturn, possibly, but in with the PlayStation, it was in the above the console where the controller port would go in. But you would only have like certain amount of blocks wouldn't you? And there would be certain games that would take up like the whole memory card, and you'd have to remember what memory card was for like certain games. I remember I'd go around
Yeah.
some of my friends' house and we'd be like, "Oh, what game?" And then you'd be there. I don't know, you wanting to play SmackDown or something, and then you'll be there trying to work out what memory card had our characters on there, and there'd be like multiple ones for the same game. We go on there and it'd be like his dad's characters, and we'd be like, well, we don't want to be the Big Show against his dad. We want to be our characters. So you're there trawling around, trying to find.
Apparently, Sega Saturn had memory cards known as Power Memory from Sega, which offered additional space for games to save their state. But did you ever make the mistake of buying third-party ones for the PlayStation 1?
I did, yeah.
Did you ever have any fail?
A couple of times, yeah, which could be a bit depressing, wouldn't it, when you were like quite far for a game and then you go on it and it would be like corrupt or whatever. But I mean, third-party stuff seemed a lot more. Like, you don't really get you do get third-party controllers, but it seemed like everyone had a third-party controller back when I used to play. And they were like, you could tell they didn't even like, especially like the N64 ones. There'd be like ones where you'd think, how are you meant to play with this sort of third-party controller? And you'd be playing GoldenEye with your friend. You'd know where you are on your like status amongst your friends if you were the one given the third-party controller, because it probably meant that you were seen quite at the bottom of that group of friends. But then I remember one time we were playing, it was track and field, and it was one of those controllers where you could put turbo on.
Yes,
and, we were playing it, and our friend who we gave the terrible controller to, it was one of those. Well, obviously, it ended up being good for him in that one, but he didn't really win any games. And then we were playing there on doing the 100 meters, and his character just went off like it was like Sonic. And, he had the turbo on, so he was breaking every record on track and field, which.
You'd know that they were cheating. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't even hide the fact that he had the turbo on, and I mean, it was quite obvious when we couldn't even see our characters on the screen anymore by the time we'd finished 100 meters.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've just had the worst ever memory card failure. I just got to go back to that because I played Final Fantasy VII, and I played it for 70 hours with a third-party memory card. And I went to load it up one day, and it said failed to read. Yeah, it's corrupted, and so I lost 70 hours of gameplay. It meant that I could basically get to the same point because I knew what I was doing. I got to the same point in about 35 hours. But yeah, I had a face like thunder for those whole 35 hours because I'd lost 70 hours of play. I was furious. I still remember to this day. This is obviously going back 25 years because I got it when it came out, and I never bought a third-party one again. I bought it. I went out and bought an extra first-party one to make sure, and then the third-party ones I only ever used for like games that had high score tables and things like that.
Not to that extent, but I had Pokemon, the original Pokemon. I had like Pokemon Yellow, which I know Red and Blue were out before it, but that you could save on that because I had the tube in the cartridge. You have one save on there at a time, and I put quite a bit of work into it. I'd beaten the Elite Four, and I was like trying to collect all the Pokemon at this point. I think there was still a few I needed to get. Like some you had to like go to Japan and be part of an expo, which I knew that was a dream that I probably wasn't going to achieve. But like yeah, I was on my way, and I was trying to get like my ones to a level 100, like the main 6 I had, and my cousin, this was like back when it came out, so it would have been like late 90s probably. But my cousin, he ended up having his appendix out, so he was in hospital. And that being nice, I was like, to my mum, I was like, he can borrow my Game Boy while he's in hospital. And I didn't really think, but I gave him the Game Boy. I had like Pokemon in there, but there was like other games there, like Micro Machines and stuff like that, like games where I was like, well, he won't like go. Put on my Pokemon, turn it up, and I was speaking to Professor Oak, and he was asking me what Pokemon do I want to pick, and I couldn't really like be mad at him because he just had his appendix out. So I was like, "But
I had that last year. It's easy."
Yeah, I had my appendix out in 2020 as well, and it wasn't too bad. Just had a little overnight stay in hospital, and but I mean, our podcast would be taking a turn there. We start talking about
appendicitis. No, we're not going to start talking about appendicitis. Listeners,
cartridges as well. We don't have cartridges anymore, but back in the day, that was what it was, wasn't it? Sega Mega Drive, and for some reason, Sega Saturn and PlayStation were like, well, CDs are the future, and Nintendo was like, nope.
Because of course the PlayStation 1 only came about because Nintendo and Sony were met up and were making made a prototype CD console, and Nintendo decided that they didn't want to do that. So Sony, rather than just scrapping it and carry on, Sony decided that they were going to release this, and hence the PlayStation 1 came out. And you can still actually, that if you've got a few £1,000, as in probably 6 figures, you can actually buy. I think somebody was selling one of the prototypes recently.
I have seen them before.
And it was so it was going to be a Nintendo CD console, and obviously Nintendo haven't shot themselves in the foot really because they're still very successful. But yeah, Nintendo lost out on the PlayStation 1. And
but they did allow Sony to enter the market, didn't they?
Indeed. So it's good for gaming in the long run. But yeah, obviously the cartridges didn't have the storage capacity, but they had a lightning fast transfer rate. So
yeah, I mean, when you think of that, generally, like the N64 PlayStation and the Sega Saturn, like the N64 was, I know it was 64-bit rather than 32-bit, but yeah, it did seem like it was like a generation ahead of those two consoles.
I mean, the main thing was cutscenes. If you remember, obviously, the N64 didn't have any CGI cutscenes.
No, not like Metal Gear Solid, where you could.
So
being like a movie.
Yeah, and PlayStation obviously brought things like with Final Fantasy VII, and Tomb Raider and all this kind of thing, where they had CGI cutscenes that people were like, wow, even though it had nothing to do with the graphical ability. It just meant that there was the extra storage there for the CD ones, but you had to wait for them to load, and you had to wait for the game to load.
Yeah, and they would take forever to load. I remember the load bar on the screen, and you'd be like, it'd always get to quite the end really quick, and then the last blob took about. I was
going to make a cup of tea.
Yeah, 10-year-old me would be like, how can that do 3/4 in 5 seconds, and then the last quarter take about 10 minutes? It's but yeah, I remember the good thing about the cartridge though, if the CD didn't stop working, when you try to put a CD in, it didn't read the disc, that's it, the game's over. Cartridge, give it a blow, put it in, and you're
apparently that was something that Nintendo kept telling people to not do.
I know.
And yet people still to this day will argue with Nintendo and say, no, you there works.
Still to this day, I've got a reputation amongst my friends that if there's a cartridge that needs blowing, it's me who blows it, because for some reason back in the day I was able to like that. I don't know if that came across really on the podcast.
I think we need to keep it kid friendly in terms of you being a good blower.
But I'm a hell of a good blower when it comes to blowing on cartridges. Anyway, cartridges. So probably move on from that one. But
sorry, sorry. No, we'll move on from that one. Yeah, before I either lose control or we say something we probably shouldn't in a non-explicit podcast.
We'd have to put a warning up.
Third-party controller as well. I mean, the funniest one I've ever bought was I bought the Wu-Tang Clan game on PlayStation 1, and it came with the controller that was shaped in the Wu-Tang Clan symbol, the W. Oh my God, it was such a terrible controller. I tried to return the game without the controller, and they said, you haven't brought the controller back. And I went, damn it. But then I did actually return the game and the controller because it was just awful game and an awful controller. So, yeah. I think
we mentioned third-party controllers a little bit as well, didn't we? I said about track and field and stuff like that.
Yes, yeah. If you could get ones that had a good auto fire, you could have a definite advantage. Another one was shoot 'em ups was a good advantage for that, because some of them you had to tap to shoot, and if you had an auto fire, you could just
machine gun without having to. About game over as well. Like nowadays, if you die in a game, it doesn't mean you have to start that game over again. I mean, worst case at the moment is that you start at like a checkpoint or something, but that's like worst case. Most of the time, you just pop that way, you just died, and you just carry on with you. But if
you don't have that ability in a game, I mean, Watchdog Legions. Obviously, it's a game where you can save pretty much anywhere, and that game I remember because it is incompatible with quick resume. I just stopped playing it because I lost about half an hour of play, and I've never completed it because
that's a long time.
And that's I mean, the game that you said earlier, Sonic the Hedgehog. If you lost all your lives, you didn't go back, because Mario you could lose all your lives, but you'd go
back to like a world, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you'd go back to that world, or you just have to restart that level again. You wouldn't have any checkpoints. You wouldn't be back at any checkpoints that you'd passed. Whereas Sonic, no, if you lost your lives, you went back to Green Hill Zone 1.
So when you had when you were on your last life, you didn't have any rings, the anxiety.
Oh dear! Oh yes.
Absolute shaking there, shaking. People listening will not be able to see, but I'm doing a shaking hand symbol at the moment. But it'd be terrifying. Or on those levels where there was like a timer as well, you could see it timing down, all the water coming up or something on the level.
So I'm just gonna give some Sonic the Hedgehog fans a heart attack right now. Wow. Because underwater levels, when you couldn't find where's the air?
You're looking for those bubbles, wasn't it? Was it the bubbles?
Yeah, it was the bubbles. Yeah, you had to find the little bubbles that turned into big bubbles, and then sometimes even you get to them and you jump and you go right past it, and you were like, "No, I'm going to jump past." And oh God, it's making my heart pound just thinking about it.
I still get PTSD to this day. And then a couple more things. I think we're probably looking at the time. We're going to need to.
Obviously, I haven't got the time because my recording messed up now. So
I dropped my beer. That was my cat, though. My cat decided to try and get on the camera, so I tried to stop her, and my beer.
Cats, they're always after the spotlight.
So I think. Well, how long is it? We think about 50 minutes, but
I think you put here no online gaming. If you wanted to play with your friends,
we didn't have it. We actually had to meet in person.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
for
I don't
those
know if
that
that's a
want
good
to
thing.
know, me and Martin have never actually met in person. So,
I know.
in fact,
We
because he's
can.
got PS5 and I've got the Steam Deck and the Xbox, we never actually played a game together. So
I know. We
that time
just
will come.
assume that we both like gaming.
If suddenly the podcast disappears, you probably find out that we didn't like playing with game with each other suddenly.
Yeah, we had a really bad gaming experience.
But I'm sure that there'll be games that we'll be able to find that are cross-platform. There's loads of free-to-play ones, I think. I think at some point. But you've got things in life that means you're a bit busy at the moment, other than doing the podcast.
Yeah,
but yeah,
and then
online
meeting
gaming
up with friends, and then if you wanted to play GoldenEye 4-player, you'd have to get your friends all sat around the 16-inch TV or whatever, how big the TV you had back in the 90s. But yeah,
I mean, back in the days, a 30-inch TV was a big one in the 80s. You know,
I was going to say
if you had anything bigger,
well, that's too big. I'm going to go.
Yeah, if you had anything bigger than 30-inch, I mean, a 40-inch CRT was wow. Yeah, that's huge. I still remember going to America once and going to somebody's house, and they had a rear projection TV, which is useless for gaming, but they had a 100-inch rear projector. 100-inch? No, it wasn't 100-inch. It was like 65, 70-inch, and it was the biggest TV I'd ever seen. Because in the UK we didn't really have them. That obviously we did, but nobody I knew had one. So yeah.
And not only were they they had massive backs as well, didn't they? Like you couldn't have a TV up against the wall back in like the 90s or the 80s.
Yeah, they were nearly as far back as they were wide, or in some cases further back. Because I had a very small black and white in the 80s that we used to have in our kitchen. And then eventually it was given to me from my bedroom, and it was only about 4 or 5 inches. But back it was probably about 9 or 10 inches back. So that was portable.
Back onto like the online get to my first, and this wasn't online, but my first experience of loads of players playing one game was the first Halo on Xbox, and it was my sister's partner at the time. They're no longer together, but neither of them will watch this, so I don't have to. But they've both moved on to happy pastures new. They're both fine with their new relationships. So, but he was like my sister's older than me, but he was like really into Halo, like when it best game that's ever made, and I think it's still think he holds a view, which I think a lot of people share that view. But I went round they needed like extra players, so I got invited round. I don't think I would have, but his neighbour and him, they were linked up the Xboxes, so there was like 8 of us in one room in one house, and it was like 8 of us. We had like 60 LAN Halo.
I see. I never got to play that.
One house. It was carnage because it was like most people like running around with swords, and I mean, it took me a while, but I did end up doing it, and they were all like about like 5 years older than me, so I was probably
you took great delight in beating them.
Yeah, so when I think like Time Splitters as well, that was quite similar in terms of like that. But you could do that.
Good game, yes.
Like you could create your own thing, and you'd have like a mixture of, you and other people, but then you could put like the computer in there with you, so you could have like this massive 16 on 6 or 16 of you on one map or whatever. But going around with a monkey or whatever, you could be a different character than Time Splitters, couldn't you? But
it's a really, really good game, that Time Splitters. They found out recently. Well, there was a game recently. Was it? Homefront. Homefront, the Revolution, was it?
There is a Homefront Revolution, yeah.
And that game, there's an arcade game in it, and you can play. And for years, I think it was about 5 or 6 years after it was out, you could play the first couple of levels of Time Splitters, and somebody found out that there was a code or an action you could do that actually there is the whole game in Homefront: The Revolution.
Wow.
Yeah, so you could actually play Time Splitters. I don't know if it's Time Splitters or Time Splitters 2. I know it's 1 or 2. But yeah, you can play the whole game for free in Homefront. Now, Homefront wasn't very well received, but I think it sold quite well, and then they also reduced it to very, very cheap. So a lot of people have it, and so yeah, look that up if you own that game on anything, because I think you can still to this day play the whole Time Splitters experience.
It's a good little perk on that game. Last thing on this, and then we probably will need to wrap up, but I've put on there about demos. Like, I remember buying magazines with demos, and then so one of the first ones I can remember was the Resident Evil. I don't even know about the demo or the trailer.
Again, I think I was an adult when that came out.
See, I was in primary school. I think me and my friend watched it, and we ended up running out the room.
Was it the first Resident?
Yeah, it was the original Resident Evil. Yeah. So I think that was out 97. I think
something like that.
At time. So I would have been 7, 8 then. So
original work 1996, but probably in the UK it probably came out in 97. Yeah, so I think you were right for us. Show my age again. Tapes. I used to buy Your Sinclair magazine back in the 80s, and it had a tape on the front, and it had demos, and you had to find the place on the tape where that demo began. Sometimes
a game within a game.
They'd also give away full games sometimes. But yeah, you put the tape in the tape player, loaded up the game, and heard the for 3 minutes and played 10 minutes of a game.
Nice. Because I used to get it from Games Master was my go-to magazine, but I don't know if they still make them. I haven't seen a Games Master magazine. They used to have a TV program.
No. I think they sometimes. I think some magazines give away codes for these things that it basically it's the same as these sponsors where they say go to the x.com/me. If we had / the gaming podcast for a sponsor, hey, sponsors, contact us on Facebook or whatever. Anyway, so if we have a code sort of that says the gaming podcast, and I think that's all they have nowadays. So no, I remember CDs. Obviously, for cartridge games, they didn't really have demos for that.
No, you couldn't really do much for that, could they? But yeah, I remember it was either like that or cheats. You used to get like books. Remember one time I had me and my friend, it was like a cheat book. It was probably like that thick. It had like everything, and it was also like in the early days of when like early internet access. So like probably like late 90s, early 2000s. So we had this book, and then we also had internet access, which not everyone had. So I was brought up in like a village in Somerset, just to give you a little backstory. So everyone sort of knew each other. So me and my friend decided that we were going to try and create our own company where we'd sell cheats to people. So I had a shed in my back garden. So we like set up that was our offices. We put we had a battery powered radio player that couldn't pick up anything on there, apart from like Virgin Radio. So we would have to listen to Virgin Radio, and we'd be there writing down cheats. I think we had I think his dad bought some cheats from us out of pity. I think we did like a deal for him. But yeah,
I remember. I did the same thing. I think in the late 90s, I think game FAQs wasn't quite so big. So I think me and a friend tried to do a cheat website in the late 90s. And yeah, I mean, things to manually put them in takes a lot of time, and to do a different page for this kind of thing for each game. And so, yeah, I mean, I think in the end, we probably put about 200 cheats in there. But when you got 200 cheats for probably 10,000 games, yeah, we didn't really have any views or anything like that.
Especially like some of the Grand Theft Auto ones were like up, down, left, right, L1, L1, R2.
Yeah,
like some of them were quite
and the stupid thing is we were copying them from cheat websites. So we weren't even finding these out ourselves or anything like that. We were just going to a cheat website, copying it, and then making this website. Yeah, it didn't work very well.
And I remember we even tried to advertise our business as well. So we didn't have a printer, so we couldn't print out so we hand wrote. And I think we did about 10, and we couldn't be bothered, and we just went and delivered them, and then didn't really hear anything else from that. But yeah, when you look back, things always you look back fondly, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, demos.
Anyway, Duncan, unless you have anything you want to add.
No, just demos on PlayStation 1.
The
PlayStation Magazine was fantastic for that, but I mean, I think you can still buy a lot of them on eBay, and they were amazing. Some of the demos. Metal Gear Solid is one that I remember. It made me buy the game. Yeah, it was just perfect representation.
Planned out to do.
So come on, make me feel old. I think. And, Go on. You want to make me feel old? 22 years.
And I think this was. So we're 24th of July. I think this was the 23rd of July, but 22 years ago, Max Payne came out. So
yeah, I had a PC as an adult and played that. I think. Yeah.
Remember the slow motion bullet. This was like the
bullet time. Well, it sort of. I think it had been in something else before it, but bullet time was basically not invented by it, but brought to the forefront by Max Payne, and it did it so well.
It came out similar time to when the Matrix film came out.
Yeah. Well, 22 years ago, 2001, so it was before the sequels, but after the first game. And so, I mean, you had also, what was the John Woo game? Not Boiling Point. But yeah, there was a John Woo game that also did it on the 360 a few years later. But Max Payne, it was just so implemented so well that you couldn't do it all the time. You had to sort of press a button and jump, and at certain point, not at a certain point, but it was so cinematic, and you felt so powerful when you did it. It was so good. But yeah, 22 years ago, I was 23 years old. Yeah, it was a very dark storyline. It wasn't exactly a cheerful story. It was about him and his wife being murdered.
Painkillers. I remember you taking painkillers, didn't you?
Yeah, he was basically a druggy. Kind of. Yeah, it was. If you want a nice, cheery, happy story, don't play Max Payne. Any of them, really, because they're all about misery and death and. Yay! Let's finish the podcast on misery and death.
I think that's probably a good time to call it.
I think we've done a super long podcast this week. And again, I do apologise about it's my technical issues that have caused problems this time. So I do apologise, but hopefully it will still sound good.
That's 1-1. That is 1-1. Hopefully. At the very minimum, you have the video on YouTube.
There will be video and audio.
Well, I guess the only thing I can say.
Pardon?
All I could say is thank you for. All I was going to say is thank you for anyone who's tuned in, either on YouTube or through our podcast. We appreciate it. Duncan there with a thumbs up for those people who are on the podcast. And we'll see you next week. I don't know if you want to add anything, Duncan. Your plans, what are you going to play this week? Or is it just going to be more Game Pass stuff?
Yeah, probably more Game Pass and more Hitman. I don't think I've really got onto that, but we'll get onto that another episode. That Hitman is my go-to game because my 5-year-old, I like putting people to sleep. Yeah, they look like they need a sleep. So my 5-year-old says that person looks tired. But no, nothing else. Like and subscribe and all that stuff, and I hope to see you in episode 4. All right, bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone, and see you later, Duncan. Bye.